Hello and welcome to another video. Today we're going to make a Swedish favorite, pyttipanna, or in this case, because we're going to use beef, Oxpytt. Now, when I first saw this dish, I assumed it was a breakfast dish because in the US we would probably eat something like this for breakfast. But in Sweden, it's a sort of a dinner comfort food. Moreover, there are some particular subtleties in how this dish is presented and eaten in Sweden, which make it particularly interesting, both from a culinary and presentation perspective. As I've come to get better at making this, it's become one of my favorite dishes, and it's absolutely delicious, assuming that it's made and prepared nicely. Americans would think of this as being similar to like a potato hash, but while it is in fact a potato hash, this dish is itself kind of distinctive, so we'll get into all of that. At any rate, enjoy, and hope you like this. So as we make this dish, there are a couple things to note. This dish is pretty resilient to differences in proportion, but it's not perfect. So if you find you have too much at one stage, you can maybe cook, you can separate some of it out and make another batch later. The second thing is that this dish was pretty typically used to get rid of odds and ends in terms of meat. So typically you might have very tough pieces, and therefore the meat needs to be chopped very finely. Odds and ends of bacon, odds and ends of beef, odds and ends of whatever, they can all be chopped up and thrown into this. Third, potato dishes in general benefit from being cooked multiple times. So in this case, I boiled the potatoes before I started, and I'm actually going to fry them twice. As I fry them the first time, they will cook, but they won't cook all the way. When I cook them the second time, they will develop a much nicer texture. Potato texture varies a lot depending upon how you cook it, and especially when frying, potatoes are better fried multiple times. So those are the quick implementation notes. On to actually cooking this. So here are our ingredients. We have potatoes. Now I've boiled these in salt water and peeled them. We have an onion, small onion for that much potatoes. An egg, this will go on at the last. We have bacon, in this case Wacholderbauch, which again is my favorite German bacon. You can use a variety of meats. I just grabbed some basically shredded beef here. I'll cut this into smaller pieces. And I'm not going to use this whole thing. I'm just probably going to use a handful or so. You have salt, pepper. We'll have some oil for cooking, and that will be about it. Yeah. So as a general rule, Sweden has a bunch of different kinds of potatoes. I don't think it's that particular which kinds of potatoes you use for this. And you can use, as I say, all kinds of meat, odds and ends, bits of sausage. One thing I like to add to it that many people don't are like beef or pork heart, because I found those sometimes in Sweden, and I think they make a really, really delicious addition. But you can use basically whatever kinds of odds and ends from the meat side that you like. So the first step is going to be to render this bacon here. Now this isn't a very fatty bacon, so I've added a little bit of extra fat to help it out. If you were in Sweden, you'd probably use rapsolia, which the closest thing you'll find in the US will be canola oil. But I have some schmaltz here, so I'm adding it. Schmaltz, if you're not aware, is a poultry fat that's commonly used in Yiddish and German cooking, typically from chickens, although this is from a goose. But anyway, I chose to use the schmaltz because it's an animal fat and the cooking characteristics will be very similar to that of an animal fat or a bacon, although it's lighter. Now this is on about a medium. We're going to leave it on a medium for a while and just let it kind of cook and the fat to come out here. Once this is cooked, we'll set it aside, and then I'll cook the potatoes next. So here you can kind of see how the rendering is complete, and we have plenty of oil as a result. Maybe we won't have enough for everything, but in that case I can just add more. Now I have turned this up to from about a 3 for rendering to about a 5 for frying. Going to give it about 30 seconds, and then I'm going to add the potatoes. Actually, not even 30 seconds. It's looking pretty good right now. Once in a while I'm going to go ahead and stir this, otherwise I'm just going to let it fry, and we'll be back when this is done frying. While this is frying, I'm going to go ahead and add some pepper. And lightly salt it. So now the potatoes are just starting to brown a little bit. I'm going to go ahead and take them off the heat, and then I'll cook the onions, meat, and then I'll add the potatoes back in for final cooking. Like a lot of potato dishes, this does benefit from being from the potatoes being cooked 2 or 3 times, and so it's just worth noting that. So I've finally chopped my onion, and now I'm going to add it. And I'll go ahead and stir this with, again, a little more pepper. Until the onions start to get pretty translucent, and then I'll add the meat, including the bacon again, which I've chopped. So the onions are pretty translucent now. I'm going to go ahead and add the beef and the bacon right away. And again, I've chopped this bacon again. For those of you who see odds and ends bacon at the store, this is a good use for that. But in this case, yeah. So anyway, I'm going to go ahead and just stir this and cook it until this part's done. And then I'm going to add back in the potatoes and cook one more time. Now this is starting to look pretty done, but I'm realizing I have quite a bit more than I need for my lunch. So I'm actually going to take a large portion of this. I'm going to set it aside. I can then use it for some other things. I could use it to make another batch of this later, or I could use it as a base for a soup, or a bunch of other things. So just just keep in mind that just because you have more than you might otherwise use doesn't mean you have to use it right now. So I think that looks about right. So now I'm going to add the potatoes. I'm going to stir this back together. Again, turning this back up to about a medium-high. What you'll find is that sort of the best proportion is mostly potatoes, but with a little bit of other stuff. And that's actually smelling really good, and it's looking really nice. So I'm going to cook this for a little bit longer, then I will plate it up, and I'll cook the egg. Now, there are two ways you can do the egg. One is that you can fry it and put it with a runny yolk on the top. The other is you can save the egg white for something else, and you can just put the yolk on top in its eggshell raw. So those are the two ways that this is eaten. And now this has been cooking together on basically a medium-high heat, or between, you know, on a scale of 1 to 10, 1 to 9, about a 7. It's been cooking for about 10 minutes. And I think this is starting to look really good. So I'm going to go ahead and put it on a plate and fry the egg. And now one important thing about the egg. The egg, if you're frying it, should be cooked sunny side up. And the yolk needs to be runny, but the white should be at least reasonably firm. So you can help that process along a little bit. But this is going to take just a moment. We can lightly salt the egg. We can, if we want to, add a very small amount of pepper, but we don't need to add very much because the egg isn't really the flavor on its own. And we're just going to let this cook for just a couple moments until the white's cooked all the way through, and the yolk is still very runny. If the yolk is cold, that's no problem. Remember, sometimes they serve this with raw yolks, but nobody likes raw egg whites on their potatoes, so let's make sure the egg whites get cooked. We give it just a little bit more time, and this is just about done. I think I'm not even going to stop the camera because I really don't expect this to take more than another 30 seconds or so. And with the exception of this little bit right around the yolk, this is now pretty done. So I'm going to declare this complete. Turn off the stove, scoop the egg onto the top, like so, and garnish if you like. In this case, I've taken a sprig of lovage. And so here we have Oxpytt. And when we eat it, we're going to break the egg yolk and just let the egg yolk run down into the potatoes. This will give it a real richness that you usually don't find with other hashed potatoes dishes. And this is one of the things that makes it really great as sort of a Scandinavian lunch or dinner dish, particularly in Sweden. So here we have this dish, Oxpytt. And so what we're going to do is we're going to break the yolk and drizzle the yolk onto the potatoes, like this. And so then when we get some of this, we'll get some of the egg yolk, as well as some of the potatoes and bacon and stuff. And this is a wonderfully rich dish. It's delicious, and I hope you enjoy it. Bon appetit! If you have questions, reach out in the comments, and enjoy. See you next week.